Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our February 14th Portsmouth Town Council meeting. It's good to have the whole council here tonight. It's been a long time since we've all been present, so this is great. Before we get started, we are doing the simulcast. So I do need to go through our evacuation in the event of emergency. You would exit council chambers to your left or through the front door here. We would meet across the street at the school administration building and await further instruction. Now we will stand for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence for our men and women serving in harm's way.
Flag of the United States of America. One nation, indivisible.
Thank you all. Bringing this a little closer. You have to bear with us. We've got new toys up here tonight, so we're gonna get used to the new microphones. Okay. So for those of you participating from home, star 6 to mute and unmute your phone. Star 9 will indicate you have a question. For those of you participating on the Zoom, there's an icon for you to raise your hand, and when called upon, and anyone also speaking tonight coming to the podium, please state your name and address for the town clerk. Okay. Let's take our roll call, although we're all here. Do we really need the roll call?
For the public.
For the public, okay.
Ms. Jufuza? Present. Ms. Abbott?
Here.
Mr. Hamilton?
Here.
Mr. Katzman?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Dr. Ryan?
Here.
Mr. Aguiar?
Here. Okay. Not used to hearing myself. It's going to be an adventure. Okay. I do not have anything to report under the President's executive summary. We have consent agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jufuza? Aye. Ms. Abbott? Aye. Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguiar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we'll be sitting as the Board of License Commissioners. That's first, it's a victular license. It's a new annual license. It's Andrew VL, DBA Andy's 19th hole, 500 Anthony Road.
Move to approve. This is a new vendor at the Montauk Country Club, taking over the kitchen.
Second.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jufuza? Aye. Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguiar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have entertainment license, Rhode Island Rugby
Motion
Football.
to adjourn.
What's that?
Motion to adjourn as the Board of License Commissioners.
No.
No.
Shouldn't we do the entertainment license for
Oh,
the
sorry.
big piece of these first?
Jumping for it.
Jumping?
Jumping.
You in a hurry tonight?
In a hurry
Want to move
tonight,
it? Want to move along?
Wait, I'm the only one who's allowed to make the mistakes here.
You're all throwing me off.
Motion to approve the entertainment license for the Beast of the East for the weekend of April 23rd and 24th, 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jufuza? Aye. Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguiar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Motion to adjourn from the Board of License Commissioners.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jufuza? Aye. Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguiar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. So next we'll be moving on to our minutes of our January 24th meeting.
Move to
Motion to-
approve is presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa? Aye. Ms. Abbott? Aye. Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. On to our town administrator's report. Mr. Rayner?
Good evening, Mr. President, Town Council, ladies and gentlemen. Well, as you've already seen, we have a new audiovisual system here in the chamber. It is now operational. It's online. There is still one part on back order, and when that is received, this fourth monitor will be functional. The system includes directional microphones with on-off buttons. So for the benefit of everybody in the chamber and participating at home, it is best if everybody speaking into a microphone makes sure that these microphones are pointed at you because they are directional. Counselors may keep their microphones on, as your microphones can all be on at the same time. You've probably heard some news about the opioid litigation. It was announced 2 weeks ago that Rhode Island will join in the national opioid settlement with 3 major opioid distributors. The proceeds of this settlement are meant to provide funding for state and local efforts to address Rhode Island's opioid crisis. The terms of this deal for Rhode Island ensures that the state and its cities and towns will receive these funds, whether or not the national settlement takes place or goes into effect next July. Payments will be spread out over 18 years. We expect to start receiving the first distribution of funds soon, and will place them in a restricted account. We will come back to the council with a recommended distribution of these funds once we have received clear guidance on appropriate and authorized uses. You probably also heard a lot about the free COVID home tests. The first distribution of the free COVID tests from the state has been made in accordance with the Rhode Island Department of Health and FEMA guidance. In addition, we have distributed kits to homebound families. We have now completed the priority distribution in accordance with the guidance received. We expect more test kits over the next 2 weeks, and we are planning to distribute those at a drive-through distribution in town later this month. The planning for that is ongoing. With respect to the task that you gave me regarding the West Side Development Advisory Committee, that committee has elected a new chairperson. He is aware of the council's desire to review the committee and for me to provide a recommendation on whether it is to be kept in place, dissolved, or have it incorporated into another town committee. I've spoken at length with the chair, and I agree with him that the committee should have time over the next couple months to evaluate their goals and priorities prior to me reporting back to the council. And then lastly, with regard to the recent storm, we all know that DPW has been working hard over the last few weeks, keeping our roads safe for travel. But I would particularly like to commend their work during the blizzard conditions 2 weeks ago. Of note, the state has collected data from all 39 cities and towns regarding the costs associated with that blizzard. And there is a possibility for FEMA reimbursement of 75% of our response costs, and I'll keep the council posted. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Okay, on to resignations and appointments. First item is the school committee appointment. There was one vacancy, and there are now 5 applicants. One of the applicants, Mr. Ben Farrell, has withdrawn. So we do have 5 applicants. The way we're going to do this tonight is similar to when the council made the appointment for the vacant town council position. It'll be council discussion. We are not going to open it up to the applicants for discussion because we did not put that in our solicitation out for applicants. So I'd like to limit it to just council discussion. We can take nominations for applicants. There can be more than one nomination, and councilors can vote for, it's really going to be the most votes like we did for the council. So if we go through the first round and there's a tie, then we would vote again. And at that point, you, as a council, you could only vote for one applicant. So does that seem fair? Everybody understand that? Well, I know after the last appointment, when we made the appointment for the council position. I did hear from some folks after the meeting that, they didn't understand the rules or how we were going to do the selection process. So I just wanted to put it out there. I do want to thank all of the applicants. It was great to see, we did have 7 applicants. So I do want to thank all of the applicants. Tonight, we can only appoint 1 person. We definitely appreciate your participation, and this nomination or this appointment will only be until the election this fall. So again, if you're unfortunate tonight and are not appointed, I do encourage you to consider seeking the positions in the fall when that will be going out again during the election process. So with that, I will open it up to counselors for discussion, nominations.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I would like to, first, I'd like to observe that the 6 applicants, is it still 6 or with Mr. 5? We had this on our agenda a few weeks ago, and there was only 1 applicant. We thought we should have more, so I'm very glad to see that. I think it was timing just before the holidays that led to fewer folks raising their hand. I would like to nominate Sandra Blank. She sought the town council position, and actually she sought the school committee position a little over a year ago or so, when Isabel Kelly was appointed. So I'm glad to see someone is persistent and shows initiative to want that. So I nominate Sandra Blank.
Okay. Counselors, any further discussion? Any other?
I would, I don't think we need a second, but I do also appreciate Ms. Blank's stick to it in this. There's another candidate that I think is worthwhile as well. There's a couple, actually, all the candidates are very worthwhile, but I would like to see somebody who has the potential of being able to run again come November. And unfortunately, I think that leaves Ms. Sinclair out because she works over at the Navy base. And I'm not sure if it leaves Ms. Blank out at Raytheon, depending on where their funding source comes from, but I don't think it does. But I would like to nominate Ms. Lisa Jansen as well. She's been involved in the school committee through hearings. She's been involved in the PTOs, both at the high school and middle school. She's been very involved in the sports organizations through baseball, and I think she deserves consideration as well.
I will second that nomination. I reviewed all the resumes and I feel like Ms. Jansen's breadth of experience with our schools, both serving on the PTO and the Quinnick Island Robotics, where I had the pleasure of crossing paths with her. Her experience with working closely with our schools will be very valuable in the school committee.
Okay. So we have 2 nominations. I just want to add any further okay, no further nominations. All right, so I mean, at this point, we can vote for both candidates. I'll ask for all those in favor of each candidate, and then if there's a tie, we'll re-vote, and you can only vote for 1 candidate. Okay. So all those in favor of Ms. Blank?
Ms. Jufusa? Aye. Ms. Abbott?
Nay.
Mr. Hamilton?
Nay.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Nay. So you have 3? 4 to 3. Okay, all those in favor for Ms. Lisa Jansen?
Ms. Jufusa? Nay. Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Nay.
Mr. Kelly?
Nay.
Dr. Ryan?
Since I've already voted aye for the other candidate, I'm obligated to vote nay for this one.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. So is it?
Right.
Yes.
Let's add those up.
You messed me up, so who?
There were- Correct.
All right, so there were 4. Okay.
4 ayes.
Sorry, I got to remember the shift button. Sorry about that.
If I may say, Mr. President, just,
Yeah.
there's some awkwardness in voting nay on a qualified candidate, but we can only pick one.
Right.
So I appreciate all of the folks who put in their
Mhm.
applications.
Thank you.
And for those who do want to run, don't wait till November. You have to start in June. Start
Yes,
now.
There's deadlines.
Find your path. This deadline is June to get on the ballot. So don't wait till November and try and do a write-in campaign or something silly.
Mr. President, I just want to add that it was a really hard choice. People are so qualified. And what really I was impressed with Ms. Blanc is that she does have an engineering background and a project management background that might address the kind of skill set that Mr.
Sure.
Schurz had. And I feel that that was what tipped it for me.
Well, thank you all. And Ms. Blank, we welcome you to the school committee. All right, so we're going to move on to our dog park committee. It's a reappointment for Mike Cranston.
Motion to reappoint.
Second.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Agia?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to old business. First item is the option to lease agreement with Church Community Housing for property located at 110 Bristol Ferry Road. Is Christian online? All right. Where is it?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, we don't have that screen.
We see ourselves. Is what we see.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Just give us a second. It's our new technology here.
Sure.
Need a teenager.
We're working out the kinks,
Yeah.
Christian.
Wait for it.
All yeah, it's just not on the TV here. But does everybody have Zoom on their computer in front of them?
We have to log
So if
in.
we have the Zoom in front of us, we don't need that.
Yeah.
That's true.
We can still hear them.
Yeah. All right, so. We're good? All right. We're good. So Christian, I can hear you, but I can't see you.
That's okay.
So we're gonna work through this. Oh, there you are, on my left. I appreciate you guys, you working with the town to put forth the option to lease agreement. And I know we're gonna open it up to some questions. I just want to understand with this agreement that's before us, is this the final lease agreement, or would there be additional detail as the process evolves a little bit? Because right now we have conceptual plans. I'm pretty comfortable with the conceptual plan and the discussions that have occurred to date. The framework of everything seems there, but there's still like details that I think need to be included into the agreement. So I'm just curious, is there still room will there be an opportunity for additional discussion on this lease agreement, or is this it?
No, this is just an option. So I think as everybody's aware, the Portsmouth voters approved the referendum in November, authorizing the council to enter into a ground lease with Church Community Housing for the redevelopment of the Ann Hutchinson School property. But we do not have permitting approval from the planning board yet, and we also need to get all of the funding and financing approvals as well, which follow the permitting from the planning board. However, in order for us to move forward, we need some kind of what's referred to as site control. And so while we aren't ready to enter into a ground lease yet, and we understand the town isn't either, the funders want to see that we have something that says that, you know, as long as things proceed in the way that we understand, that we can then negotiate a ground lease with the town. And so that, I believe, is what the option for the option to lease states. It basically lays out all of the terms that we've discussed so far about the redevelopment project, and includes the preliminary plans as an attachment to the option, and indicates that as long as we get through the permitting process and the project remains substantially similar to the preliminary plans that we have now, that we will have the option to enter the to be negotiated ground lease with the town at that time.
Okay. All right. So for example, now I can see it. Issues with providing parking and things like that for Little League. I mean, I know we're showing stuff on the plan. We haven't really committed to a number of spaces, but let's just say, for example, Little League needs 30 parking spaces on a Saturday during the Little League season. You know, are you able to accommodate a specific number of parking spaces so that Little League has, you know, the ability to park out there on a Saturday or a Sunday, you know, during the Little League season?
I mean, that's absolutely what will be raised during the planning board permitting process. And honestly, we're not even at that point yet, because we need to do the engineering related to the septic system and see, you know, what that leaves us with in terms of the relocation of the ball field. So, you know, this just allows us to move forward to further develop the plan with the, you know, the principles and the major factors that we've laid out to the voters and to the town council up to this point in writing.
Okay, so there will be further, as you just stated, there'll be further discussions with the actual ground lease at some point in the future, once your plans are more finalized and things start to fall into, you know, you've eliminated some of the potential question marks now that you need to investigate through your due diligence process with planning board, zoning board, DEM, all those, you know, different folks that have jurisdiction.
Correct.
I just wanted to, you know, put that out there that if we do move forward with this tonight, it's not 100% final. I mean, we still have the ability to work out the specifics of the lease agreement at a future date.
Yeah, I mean, very simply, what you have before you is not the ground lease. It is an option to lease.
Okay.
The ground lease comes later, after permitting approval. And most likely after we have all of the funding in place as well.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Christian, because I think that was, that was just a point of clarification, and I just wanted to kind of get that addressed right up front. And I don't know if any other counselors have questions at this point. If not, we can open it up. I know there's some folks in the audience that I think have some questions, and then we'll go from there. Mr. Grebe?
Tom Grebe, 110 Thayer Drive. First, let me say your new audio system, at least in the room here, is fantastic. I've never heard the council as well as I do now. According to the backup information for this agreement, the present baseball field will be moved to the Brownell Lane side of the property. Portsmouth will move it at taxpayer expense. My question about this agreement with Church Community Housing is this: why are you including the ball field land in the lease? Portsmouth owns the property. We are paying to move the field. Portsmouth will be maintaining it. We plan to schedule the use of it, and Church Community Housing will not be paying taxes associated with it. Why did the council put that parcel of land in this lease agreement with Church Community Housing? For that matter, why would Church Community Housing want the liability exposure of having that ball field in their lease? I can see no logical reason for the ball field land to be included in this agreement. It should be separated and remain a Portsmouth property. Portsmouth should not just be giving town property away. Portsmouth's retaining this property will have absolutely no impact on Church Community Housing's plans, and it vastly increases Portsmouth's future options. If this council disagrees with excluding the ball field from this agreement, the residents deserve to be told the reason why the council thinks it needs to be included. So I end with my question: will you exclude the baseball field from the property lease? And if not, why not? Thank you.
So I think I understand your point, Mr. Grebe. I'm not sure that is the ball field in the lease? Because the fields were supposed to remain the town property. So I think it's listed in the options.
It's all part of the same parcel.
Yeah,
It's part of the same parcel. We're not, I think we had that discussion early on that we're not able to subdivide the parcel.
I don't remember why was that? I don't remember that discussion.
No,
honestly.
I believe during the planning process for the feasibility, it's one parcel, and the town would be leasing a portion of that parcel, which would be to convert during the process. And Christian, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The thought was to renovate the existing building and then possibly build a second building. I believe through their due diligence, the ability to possibly renovate the Ann Hutchinson School has not been determined yet. But the fields are, they're there for part of the open space. The town retains ownership of them. It's my understanding that those fields will remain under the town's ownership. The town portion of this would be to relocate, help relocate the fields out of the way, but we're not giving up the ball field land.
Okay, I misunderstood that. When I said the Ann Hutchinson School property, I thought it was the entire parcel rather than the land. You might want to clarify that, because I'm not a really stupid reader.
No.
Somebody else may feel that same way, and you don't want to get yourself in trouble. You may want to clarify that.
Yeah, no, I think on a similar path, and I think that's why I wanted to clarify tonight that this was the option for a lease agreement, and we still have to work through the actual details of the ground lease. And I think, my comments later on, I think during those negotiations or discussions would be more prudent with maintenance of the field, parking, certain things like that. But I don't think that's really what we're here tonight. It's more about the ability for the option to move option to lease agreement to move it forward to
And the
see
lease
if,
agreement would be for a part of the
yes.
Hutchinson School property, not the entire.
Well, Christian, is that a fair statement?
Can I make a little clarification? I think perhaps because some time has elapsed, that maybe our the our recall about the specifics related to this property versus the other property has gotten a little blurry. When Church Community was first approached about the Ann Hutchinson School property, we were told by the town that the ball field there did not need to remain, that we had the entire parcel available to us for the development. And it wasn't until I learned that the ball field was still actively used by the Little League that Church Community took it upon ourselves to try to find a way to keep the ball field on site, because we saw it as a great attribute to have children included on the use of a property with elderly affordable housing and with the senior center. And so the referendum that was passed is for a ground lease for the entire property. My understanding is that it was going to cost the town significantly more to build a new ball field somewhere else. And so the town was very pleased to learn that we thought that it was possible that we could retain the ball field here on site just through relocation by the town. But I believe that it is one contiguous parcel that includes the area of the ball field, but that if after we continue with our engineering and we identify the space that we need for the septic system, we can have that ball field. We would then lease back that portion of the land to the town for, $1 a year that contains the ball field at that point. But we don't know at this point because we haven't designed that septic system yet.
I do remember the septic system discussion now. I was involved early on and then got distracted and wasn't able to continue on. But I think that is a driving factor of things is going to be the septic system and where it can go. And it was Church Community that offered to try to accommodate the ball field there because Little League was using those fields. So, that's still a discussion that needs to occur down the road. Working with our Little League folks as well to see what they're using for fields. There are some fields in town that some get used more than others. So they might be able to consolidate and work through things. But as far as, finalizing the terms of the ground lease, that's still to be determined at a future date.
And I want, one thing you said, I want to make sure I understand. What is the reason this parcel cannot be subdivided?
It because of the size of the parcel, we'd need voter approval.
No, you've got voter approval to do anything you want with that parcel. You could sell it.
No, we do not. We only have voter approval to enter into a long-term lease. We don't have voter approval to subdivide the parcel.
Wow, that was a big mistake. Okay, all right. I've got it now. It's the voter approval that is causing it. Thank you.
Okay. So now moving, we need a motion. Sure.
Thank you. I don't want to perturb things much, but to your point of ensuring for the town and this council or a future council that this is not a last bite at the apple.
Mhm.
I think it is appropriate to ask at this point if I could add 2 words to the document. That is at the very end of paragraph 1, the last sentence. It reads, the ground lease shall also include standard terms and conditions common to ground leases of this type and such other provisions that may be reasonably required by lenders and equity partners. I would like to add other provisions that may be reasonably required by the town, lenders, and equity partners. To show we are at the table to ask for reasonable provisions going forward. And I think it would be reasonable to ensure that, we only would be asking for things that we have discussed. We're all on the same page. We have a history and a record.
Mhm.
And if lenders and equity partners can call some shots, I think the town needs to, I just want to clarify that with those two words, the town can request provisions be, and if the provisions aren't met, that's our bite at the apple, if you will, to make sure that all of the i's are dotted and t's are crossed when the time comes.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second to add
The town before the words,
the town.
lenders and equity partners. Well, the town, comma,
Yeah.
yes, but
Christian, did you understand what we were discussing there?
Yep.
Is that, do you have any thoughts or comments?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay. All right.
It's somewhat covered in paragraph 2 as well, but it solidifies it a little bit more. Yeah.
So if there's no further discussion, do we have a motion from the
Well,
council?
We have to vote on his motion first and then vote on the agreement as amended.
All right, sorry. We have a motion and a second on the modification to paragraph 1. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott? Aye. Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes.
Motion to approve the option to lease agreement with Church Community Housing as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Chair, point of information. just briefly. I apologize. Charles Levesque, 542 Park Avenue. I believe, to answer the gentleman's question and maybe some concern here, I believe DEM does not allow you to have a septic system on somebody else's land. So I believe that the requirement is that you build a septic system and then have a lease back agreement. So I think that there is still some curiosity on the young man's part. And I believe that kind of resolves at least why it is not subdivided.
Thank you.
Moving on to
Mr. President, before you do that, can I ask the council's pleasure in moving up new business number 5 so that we can allow our DPW director to go home and get some sleep since he was up all night with the crew paving?
I thought he was sleeping.
Not paving, excuse me, plowing.
I think that'd be a very gracious
Oh,
thing.
that's a great idea.
Unless there's an objection from.
As long as there's no objections from anybody else.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor of moving new business number 5 up? Or
To be heard now.
to be heard now?
Should we need to vote?
Do we need to vote on that?
No, we're just doing it.
Okay.
Mr. Woodhead.
Council President, members of the council, on November 22nd, 2021, the council approved the recommendation priorities from the American Rescue Plan. And one of the priorities that were listed was the installation of a DPW water main extension from our DPW garage to the fire station to make the loop. We did go out and we did get a quote to get this installed. It came in under the $118,125 to $110,877. And after speaking with Jessica from the Portsmouth Water and Fire District, the chief engineer, we thought this would be a good opportunity to partner up together and have DPW do the excavation while Portsmouth Water and Fire does inspections and help with the installation of the pipe. And if we receive your approval, the Portsmouth Water and Fire District will donate their labor and inspection times for the installation And the town will purchase the water main materials from the water department and also the chlorination and dechlorination of the water line. So this joint project will reduce the estimated cost down to $58,162.50. And I ask council to approve the public works to partner with the Portsmouth Water and Fire District for the installation of the water main.
Mr. President, I'll be recusing myself from this vote as I also serve on the water board.
Mr. President, motion to approve the request made by Mr. Woodhouse.
Second.
Any further discussion? We have the motion in a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes
Thank you.
6-0 with one recusal. Thank you, Mr. Woodhead. Now you can go get some rest. Okay, so let's, moving back to old business number 2. It's a presentation by the Southeast New England Program Network, SNEP, of their recently completed Portsmouth, Rhode Island Climate Resilience Planning and Finance Strategy Report. Mr. Crosby.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I want to say 2 things. One is that, thank you, Brian, that I can't believe that we ended up with 6 or 7 or 8 inches of snow, fairly surprisingly, and nice job, well done. Secondly, let me put in a little bit of an introduction to the SNEP network. Back in April of 2021, right when we were scrambling to try and figure out what to do about COVID, this came to us. It was they put out a solicitation for the SNEP network, Southeast New England Program Network, and Joanne is there tonight, and she can explain it far better than I. But their collaboration and the partners that they have, but they put out a solicitation for technical assistance in creating a comprehensive community resilience strategy. I responded to their RFP with a proposal that we work on a comprehensive community resilience strategy for Island Park. It's been one of my passions for quite some time, is that when we're seeing what we believe will be impacts from storms and climate change and sea level rise and so forth. Island Park is extremely vulnerable to this sort of thing. So I put in a proposal to the SNEP network to help the town to develop a strategy for what we're going to do for this, about this neighborhood in the coming decades. They came back and said that we think that the Island Park neighborhood is a component of what we would like to do, but they came back and said that we would like to help you develop a town-wide climate resilience planning and financing strategy. So we agreed with, this is a terrific thing. They collaborate with the University of Maine to provide funding for this sort of thing. So we signed a memorandum of agreement to commit resources to doing this, and it's been a 2-year or 18-month process, and we are here at a final report, and I'm happy to introduce Joanne to present this, and Kyle and Elizabeth to present this report to you. It's not entirely complete. There are still a few minor details that need to be put together as far as cost estimates for some of our priority projects, but for the most part, I think that it is a fine report, and we look forward to implementing it in the future. So Joanne, please take it away.
Thank you, Gary. Council members, for the record, my name is Joanne Throw. I am a resident of Bristol, Rhode Island. I'm president of Throw Environmental, and I'm joined by my team online. They are scattered everywhere. I have Elizabeth Scott, who Gary mentioned, and hopefully you can unmute her as needed. I also have Kyle Gray. Kyle is a project partner with Throw Environmental, and we also have Dan Neese. So we're hoping to test your system tonight. So we are going to share slides, hopefully with Kyle, who will run the slides. We're going to break it up with a few people so you don't get too bored with me talking. I'll get us started just quickly while you are getting those slides. You're sharing with Kyle. I know he's out there.
There he is.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Yep.
All right.
I'm about to share my screen. I'm just seeing that the host has disabled participant screen sharing. So I'm not sure if something needs to be done on the town's end.
Okay. Well, while we're getting that set up, let me just, first of all, give you a quick overview. I've got my watch out, so we're going to stick to our allotted time. You have hopefully a copy of the report with you. And as Gary said, this has been actually a very exciting year and a half working on this project. Tonight, we're going to quickly introduce you to who the SNP network is, so you know who was responsible for this work. We are going to talk quickly about the project overview and a timeline. We are going to have Kyle and Elizabeth talk a little bit about the capital improvement plan recommendations. We're going to talk about key findings and next steps and get you home for a great Valentine's evening. So just to get us started, I want to also recognize that this was not just Throw Environmental and Elizabeth Scott Consulting working with the SNP network, but it was a large group of work group members, and including Gary, our project, our contact point for Portsmouth. I can't say enough about having a successful project means having a town that's completely engaged and on board with recommendations and our process. So Elizabeth, if you want to unmute yourself, just talk briefly about the introduction to the SNP network, please.
Yes, sure. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be participating in this meeting with you all. So the SNP network is a collaboration of 16 partner organizations. We have a range of expertise in financing and stormwater and watershed management. And the network is administered by the New England Environmental Finance Center, which is located at the University of Southern Maine. And the network is being funded under a 5-year agreement with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, that is with the New England Environmental Finance Center. So our mission is to empower communities to achieve healthy watersheds, sustainable financing, and long-term climate resilience through management of stormwater and implementation of restoration projects. The network provides free training and technical assistance. So all of the work that we have done as part of this project has been at no cost to the town, other than the town staff's time to be involved. And so it's really all about strengthening the capacity of municipalities, organizations, and tribes across Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts. And you could visit our website to visit, which is snpnetwork.com, if you want to learn more about us. And I'm going to turn it back to, I think, Kyle.
Nope, Joanne. All right.
Joanne.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate
Great.
that. And I wanted to recognize Elizabeth as the Rhode Island liaison for the SNP network, instrumental in this project. So I'm going to quickly talk about the project overview and timeline. Now, when we work on a climate strategy that includes financing, every community has to be different, right? Because no two communities are the same. Their needs, their priorities are very different. So our approach was very unique with Portsmouth. And we started, Kyle, you're just going to read my mind. So let's go with the project, data collection slide, please. Okay. So we started with finding out as much as we could with Portsmouth, about Portsmouth. And we assembled, with the help of Portsmouth, we assembled a really impressive team to backstop us. And it was 35 members made up of the town staff. We had various disciplines involved. We had the community members, organizations. And I must say, for a small town, this was just an incredibly engaged, a very involved group. Then we went to a literature review, and a lit review probably are familiar because it is something you do at a university. Well, basically you have to start with, what has the town done? Collect as much information about the town, your past reports, as you can. So we relied heavily on 3 particular reports, even though we reviewed so many of your great work that's been done in the past. Your, what we call an MRP report, which is the Municipal Resilience Program. Great effort by the town, great engagement. We also used your hazard mitigation plan and the comprehensive community plan, among many others. So we have that now, that lit review available moving forward for the town. Our next part of this process was several exercises we conducted, unique again to Portsmouth. We're going to talk a little bit about it in more detail with my colleagues here, but we did a resilience capacity review. We developed a criteria for funding, because in order to prioritize projects, you have to know what it costs and how much, how you're going to pay for it. And then the next thing is a stakeholder engagement exercise. Now, next. So the next part of this, the second stage, which happened about the summer of 2021, it just seems like forever ago, but it was to do data exploration. Now, in order to do this, we started with something that might be very familiar with you, and it's a capital improvement plan, although this is different because it's something called a resilience capital improvement plan, a resilience CIP. Now, other communities across the country are developing this. This is very unique. It's very difficult on a CIP for resilience, climate resilience projects to compete with other priorities within a community. So we're going to talk about that briefly in a couple slides, but basically, we wanted to make sure that your master list on a resilience CIP would include capital projects that met with your resilience needs, right? They would address resilience, and they are suitable for financing, most important. And if anybody's been paying attention to all of the infrastructure bill funding, you know that so many of the projects are attached to climate. So this is a very exciting time to have this list. We determined and helped to rank those priorities and explored associated programmatic needs. There's another part we offered Portsmouth, and it's a leadership engagement piece. There's so often when we are working with a community and giving our time, we understand how important it is that all of you are aware and engaged and informed about the resilience climate needs of your community. So to that end, we engaged Portsmouth in a Soak Up the Rain webinar with EPA and teamed it with Bourne, Massachusetts, located on the Cape. And it was very well received. Oh my goodness, we had such a large viewing. So if anyone has not checked that out, your town was featured and applauded for all your work that you're doing on climate resilience. And then next, as part of this, the Association for Climate Change Officers, what we call ACO, we offered scholarships to members of the work group and members of the council to be educated and certified if they wanted to. So quickly, moving ahead, Kyle, next, the data validation stage. So next, it's very important to be able to understand the data you collected, the information you collected, the analysis you're creating, you're making, that you are looking at both the climate hazards, the impacts, the vulnerabilities of town, and you're looking at what the community is saying as well. So it was important that we did this workshop that was held in the fall of 2021. And we got some great feedback from that. And we also were able to validate some of our feedback and our findings, not just with that stakeholder group and that workshop, but also back to those 35 people who are backstopping us in our project. So then next, Kyle, then we've got the fourth piece, which is the final report. And I know you've been very busy, but I encourage you to go through it in detail. Being mindful of my time, I just want to make some key findings that were covered in those 4 areas of the final report, which is leadership engagement, vulnerability and risk assessment, resilience project portfolio we went through, and looking at climate finance and investments. We developed 5 core recommendations, and we provided some next steps for short-term action. Now, what I want to do is turn it over to Kyle quickly to talk a little bit more detail of climate resilience CIP and our approach. So Kyle.
Perfect. Thank you, Joanne. So again, we're going to go through the Resilience Capital Improvement Plan, which I'll call the RCIP. I know Joanne just teed that up, so I won't go into too much detail about what it is, but I do want to drive home the point about why it's important. So often we see projects that are capital and focus on climate resilience. They don't fare so well in the town's general fund or on the traditional capital improvement program. So what this resource does is it elevates and organizes those resilience infrastructure projects, and it gives them a little bit of priority to compete with other projects and other competing priorities in the town. It also gives us a little bit more information and allows us to understand what the scale of resilience funding and financing need is. And probably the most important point about this resource is that it evolves with the community. So as projects are completed and as new projects come up, this resource can, change with Portsmouth over time and be something that the town can go back to time and time again. So I won't go through the entire spreadsheet of projects with the limited time that we have, but I do just want to pull out a couple of different ways that we can look at these projects. So an easy way to do that is to overlay them on a map. And you can see here that most of the resilient CIP projects ended up focusing on the town's most vulnerable areas, not to anyone's surprise. So these ended up being Prudence Island, Island Park, and Common Fence Point. And that just ends up being where most of these fell on a map. You can also kind of group the projects based on their priority level. So we see that quite a few end up as a high or a medium high priority, but also, a key project in replacing the Portsmouth Park stormwater system coming in as our top priority, and then several medium level ones as well. So just showing you kind of the range of need here. If we look at the projects over a timeline, we can really start to see the scale of the need. We see that they're pretty evenly distributed here, with most of our higher priority projects, those that you'll see in red, coming to the right. So those are medium and long-term need projects. And that just goes to show that even though there are projects coming in under the short term that are, proving that climate change and the need to act on that are here and now, we also see several projects coming in as long-term needs, which just, make us think about the longer term impact of climate change on the town. And then lastly here, we can look at the projects based on the actual issue that they're addressing. So by and large, most of the projects on the Resilient CIP focused on stormwater flooding and stormwater quantity, as well as public safety, with a few also touching on drinking water and transportation. So we anticipate those will be emerging needs moving forward. But with the flooding and climate challenges, these are no surprise here. And another piece of this RCIP that Joanne mentioned is a programmatic list. So all of those projects that I just quickly overviewed are all capital in nature. But what we also included was a list of programmatic items to supplement some of those capital projects. So if we had maybe a planning activity or a study that needed to be conducted that wasn't capital, but that supported a future capital project or maybe the town's day-to-day operations, we were able to track that on a list of programmatic items. And that helps tee the town up for longer term action on climate resiliency. So we tracked those as well. And we were able through this SNAP network service to take the projects that came out on the capital list of the RCIP, as well as the programmatic list, and work to get consultant cost estimates for some of those highest priority projects. So with that, I will ask Elizabeth if she doesn't mind unmuting to talk a little bit more about the consultant services.
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to the services of Throw Environmental and myself in supporting the project, we also, the SNAP network was also able to hire PAR Corporation to basically do this costing and scoping piece of the project. And so these are the two elements of the project that are still in development. But the contract was actually, is actually between the SNAP network, the University of Southern Maine, and PAR Corporation. And while Gary was able to select from the list of qualified consultants that we have available, we basically did all of the contracting. So it really saved the town in not having to go through the whole bidding and contracting process. So PAR Corp came on, I think the contract was established at the end of December. And so they are in the process of developing cost estimates for these for high priority projects. And so that will basically put the town in a really good position to be able to either utilize the available funding that you have to move the projects forward, or to go after grant funds or other sources of funding to implement these. Next slide, please. And then the other piece that they're doing is to basically develop scopes of work and cost estimates for two of the town's high priority programmatic projects. So the first goes back to Gary's original interest when he first applied to the SNAP network for assistance, which is to basically, the consultant is basically preparing a scope of work that the town could go out for bid. Again, need to find the funding to support it. But basically developing a scope of work to do a sea level rise adaptation planning study for Island Park. So that's one of them. And then the other, after the terrible incident of the road, and I forget the name of the road that had the storm drain just explode and cause a big chasm in your road. Yes. As evidenced by that, we thought this was another one of the programmatic priorities, was to basically do a town-wide road and drainage system assessment and analysis. So in essence, to do an asset management type study of the town's infrastructure to identify existing condition, need for replacement / upgrades with a climate lens. So to kind of look at what are the likelihood of problems that may occur as a result of the more intense climate conditions that we are experiencing. So that is all underway. What we intend to do is hopefully in the next couple of weeks, PAR Corp will be wrapping this up, and then it will be, their study will be appended to the strategy report. So we'll all be in one document, but they just weren't able to get it done in time for this meeting. And I'll turn it back to, I think, Joanne.
And that would be
Me
Kyle.
again.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Perfect. So with that, we're going to go over some of our key recommendations and findings that came out of all of this work. And then I will pass it back to Joanne to finish us off with some first next steps that the town can take in the short term to move forward on those recommendations. As Joanne mentioned before, we work to structure all of this through what we call the resilience financing framework. So you see 4 different tiers here where we kind of put everything that we have into this pyramid, right? So the most foundational lens of or level of any resilience action has to be community engagement and leadership engagement, right? Working with the community to secure buy-in and to get that level of commitment needed to actually take action on climate resilience. Next, once that level of engagement is there, we're able to move on and start conducting vulnerability and risk assessments. So that's where we look to analyze what our climate hazards are, and then we think about the actual risks and vulnerabilities to different assets in the community. After that's done, we can start prioritizing areas for action, right? By looking at a project portfolio, thinking through what our actions are, starting to prioritize those, and developing cost estimates. And then finally, where all of this work really comes together, it's that final piece of sustainable funding and financing. So that's where we work to develop sustainable revenue streams and pathways for investment to get these projects on the ground, put in place, and implemented. So I bring that up now because all of our recommendations will fit into this framework. So just keep this in the back of your mind as we move forward. So on that base level, the community assessment and leadership engagement piece, we found that Portsmouth is already proactively planning for climate change. And that's evident based on those 3 reports that Joanne mentioned earlier, the hazard mitigation plan, the community comp plan, and that municipal resilience program summary of findings. All of those different documents and the work that we've done through this project have all shown really strong community engagement and stakeholder support. And we've also seen the town departments working collaboratively on this issue, right? So DPW is working with planning and with engineering, all of this. So that really strong foundation then enables Portsmouth to make meaningful investments in climate resilience. So that's something we would like to see the town build off of and move forward on. To that end, we have 2 of our recommendations that fall in this leadership engagement and community assessment level. So first is to establish a townwide resilience program. So although Portsmouth is already acting on climate resilience, there is no dedicated program that actually coordinates and develops all of these resilience activities. So we would recommend this as kind of a centralized location within municipal government to do all of that. And of course, when you have a new program, you need someone to direct that program. So secondly, we would recommend establishing a climate resilience program director position. Because of the level of resilience, the level of need that climate resilience poses here, and the need for this person to collaborate with different town departments and with organizations outside of Portsmouth, we would recommend that this person reports directly to the town administrator and that they're responsible for coordinating and implementing that resilience program. Next, on this idea of vulnerability and risk assessment, we found that Portsmouth has a really solid understanding of its climate hazards, as well as a strong inventory of its assets that are going to be affected by those hazards. To that end, there's also a strong vulnerability and risk analysis that has been done in the town, but we would also recommend that you build on those analyses and continue to move those forward with that lens of climate change. So to that end, we would recommend that there is a dynamic hazard, risk, and vulnerability assessment process put in place. And when we call this dynamic, we essentially just mean that there are 2 different kind of concurrent activities happening. So first, we would recommend that you reassess risk and vulnerability on a project by project basis. So if you're, resizing a culvert or raising a road or something, thinking about vulnerability and risk as you're doing that project. Then on a kind of routine basis, we also recommend conducting a comprehensive town-wide vulnerability and risk analysis. So you're really attacking that from 2 different angles. On this next idea of resilience prioritization and a project portfolio, we found that through all of the different planning activities, the town has done a great job of exploring the range of mitigation actions that can be taken. It has a good understanding of the infrastructure needed, as well as the programmatic needs to supplement any capital projects. But the town would benefit from a process that allows it to prioritize some of those actions in a streamlined manner. So that's really where this RCIP activity came in for this project, right? It filled that prioritization gap and allowed Portsmouth to start to develop an up-to-date portfolio of projects. So to that end, because this is a flexible and dynamic resource, we would recommend using the vulnerability and risk analysis from the last recommendation to keep building on the RCIP efforts that we've already done, to keep developing a detailed project portfolio. And when you're thinking about those projects, we'd like to see them developed out in 3 different categories. So you've got the programmatic or baseline projects that really work to structure the resilience system for the town and any of the operational day-to-day activities that the town conducts on climate resilience. Secondly, we would look at enterprise or outcome-based projects and programs that have to do with any of the essential services that the town is tasked with providing. And then lastly, it would look at the capital or infrastructure projects that the town is looking to implement specifically because of the climate need. And then lastly, all of these recommendations come together on this idea of sustainable funding and financing. So the town has begun to explore the different funding and financing mechanisms that can be used to sustainably invest in climate resilience. And there's a clear desire for the town to make those long-term resilience investments. So those sustainable funding and financing mechanisms are, exist as a way to support that desire to invest. Then, kind of considering that all together, we find that there should be municipal structures and systems that are adequately adaptable to meet that level of investment that's needed in the town. So to that end, we recommend establishing a climate resilience fund to support the activities that would be carried out through the climate resilience program. So this fund would work to, fund those projects that are prioritized within the RCIP, right? Those resilience projects that come out of that activity. It would really allow the town to leverage investment coming from within the community, but also from outside revenue streams and from private partnerships. And maybe the most effective, argument here for a resilience fund is that it would reduce the stress on town budgets. So this would be a sustainable and dedicated funding stream so that funds don't have to be taken from the general fund or from departmental budgets to pay for climate projects. So with that, we are about to wrap up. I will pass it back to Joanne to just talk about some next steps for action.
Thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Elizabeth. Just with the next steps, I know we are now over, so I'm going to make this very quick and just conclude by reiterating some possible immediate next steps, which Kyle mentioned, establishing a resilience director position. The second one would be to convene a task force to study feasibility of a resilience program. And this should, really look at the opportunities of moving what we've done here for the town of Portsmouth forward, because there's so many opportunities here. And the third one is pursue and leverage Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank funding to support priority RCIP projects. We've already had those conversations. The town has engaged with Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. They're very excited about what Portsmouth has been doing, and there are significant opportunities there. And use this RCIP to develop a portfolio of projects and programs that are ready for implementation, funding, and financing. Remember to always review this, and you've got the groundwork here in front of you, but you should definitely remember to revisit it on an annual basis. And I apologize for being over, but a year and a half, there was a lot to share. So I thank you for your time and your support of this project, and the people who were participating in the work group and the stakeholder meetings. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been a wonderful experience. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions or comments from councilors? I do want to thank Joanne, Kyle, and Elizabeth and Gary for putting this together tonight. This is a very informative document. It does give us a path forward. We have to figure out how to get on the path a little bit. But you've definitely provided us a lot of information that we now can make informed decisions with. So thank you for that. And we are looking forward to doing our part to help make Portsmouth more resilient.
Good.
We do understand the impacts and the importance of being prepared. And this will help us with that preparation. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mr. President, I want to also thank Joanne and just say, from a 30,000-foot view, what y'all did was help us put together something that will help us be able to get grant money. Because when you apply for grants, one of the first thing they ask is, well, how does this thing you're asking for fit into your general plan? And is it just a one-off request you're making? For us to have this kind of effort behind our grant applications will really help us get the resiliency money, which I think is going to be much more available given what's happening with climate change. So I think this puts us in a much better place to get the RIB grants or any other type of grants that look for thoughtful planning, because that's what this provides. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And the SNAP network will continue to look out for opportunities for Portsmouth. It truly has been a pleasure working with this town.
Thank you.
If I could jump in for a moment, Gary Crosby, Town Planner, we have just recently applied for another Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank action grant that came out of this, that came out of the MRP process and came out of this SNAP prioritization process. And we're hopeful that we will get this grant. I certainly highlighted our work with SNAP in the application, and hopefully that will score high with Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank in getting this next this next action grant. One other thing that I wanted to say was, if you notice, that when we first approached, when we first made these agreements with the SNAP network, it was in March, April, May of 2001, right when the COVID pandemic was becoming emergent. And I have to say that this was a monumental planning process, very dynamic planning process that took place during that whole pandemic, when we were all trying to scramble with technology and how we're going to make this all happen. And the SNAP network did a masterful job in helping us with getting that through that. It was a fine process, fine planning process to get through. I often joke that I don't get to do too much planning very often, and this was classic planning, and it was wonderful.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you,
Okay.
Gary.
So we don't need to take any action on it. Just keep this in our files. We'll be moving on to new business. The first item is a request to approve a resolution to support an island-wide celebration for Earth Day 2022. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have request to approve a proclamation stating March 7th through 12th, 2022 as Wellness Week with Heron. I could read through the proclamation. We typically do this in advance of, yes. So I will, what's that?
I just didn't know if this included us playing dodgeball again.
No, I think we're out of dodgeball. COVID.
Mark's
right?
out. You can use your other arm, Mark.
Oh. Yes. For the previous or, okay. All right, well, we're sorry about that.
Motion to,
We're on the proclamation.
Motion to approve the proclamation of Wellness Week.
Second.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
aye.
Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye, motion passes 7-0. Okay. All right, next we have a request to approve a resolution requesting and supporting legislation to amend Rhode Island zoning enabling act of 1991. I know Representative Corcoran is here. Did you want to say a few words or you want us to just? It was one of our initiatives, so
indeed.
thank you. So now we can do our part.
Motion, unless Rep. Corcoran wants to say a few words on motion
I don't think
to
so.
approve the resolution.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, under new business, Portsmouth Housing Authority Annual Report for 2020 and 2021. Mr. Hamilton, you had asked for this to be pulled from correspondence.
Well, I asked for it to be pulled mainly because we got the 2020 report in January of 2022. So I was looking for the 21 report, which we now have gotten. Also, there has been a lot of discussion throughout town about the conditions currently at Quaker Manor Housing. And I would like to get some assurances from the board that things are going to be moving in a better direction. I believe removing the former property manager who was obviously not doing the correct paperwork and bringing in a new property manager and management company is a good step in the right direction. But these are some of our most vulnerable citizens, and we need to make sure they're being taken care of. So that's all. I just want to make sure that people are aware of it. And I don't know if the board has anything to say or some directions that we're going to hopefully be seeing some good outcomes shortly. I'm open. My ears are open.
So you have two reports, one from last year, which was submitted last year, and the one that we just finished for 2021. I think if you've read the reports, I think it pretty clearly depicts the circumstance. The circumstance still is dire. Not for all of the housing there. The Quaker Estates are in okay shape. That's a different program than Quaker Manor. And if you've read the report, you can follow the breadcrumbs on how we got to be where we are with Quaker Manor. There isn't enough money. We're working on that. The current management agent that replaced Coastal is Phoenix Property Management. They're doing an excellent job trying to pull things together. And we'll see how it goes. We're trying to clean up some old HUD issues which loom over us. It could end up being a money thing. And we're working with HUD to get that resolved. Anybody on the council is welcome to come to any of the PHA meetings. They are open meetings. We have one coming up on Friday. If you have any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer, but I think the report's pretty much laid out for you. Any questions?
I think the biggest one that I hear is lack of support just from more, I don't want to say that the global situation is there, but just the day-to-day, getting the little things fixed and seeing small steps of progress, whether it's getting a sidewalk shoveled on time or getting a leaky faucet fixed. Just if there were some of that positive little steps, I think a lot of the residents would feel better.
this has been going on for 3 years.
Understood.
It's one of the reasons that Terry and I got involved initially. And by the way, let me just, Chuck Levesque is our counsel. Terry, Charlene Patton is our newest member. Gary Gump is on the TV, and I think Ron Harnice is out there somewhere too. Those are the 5 board members. We've got a lot to do to clear up the issues that grew from 2017 when the programmatic change was made. And in my view, not fully conducted with due diligence. Okay, and doing these little things to make the residents happier and all that is an issue because it requires money. And as I started, I'll end. There isn't much. And we're working on that. And in fact, I might come back and see you. Isn't tonight Civic Support Night? And aren't we all concerned about those residents? Okay, well, we're filling a hole, doing the best we can. But just a preview of coming attractions.
I would also go to the corner office up in the building that you also share space in and ask them for affordable housing.
Yeah, and, we'll do that, but I think we'll stop here first. So
They have a much bigger pot.
you guys are doing all right.
Did you just see the last presentation?
This is all part of resilience. Okay, so I'll probably be back.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anybody
Mr.
want to ask me how much I'll ask for? No?
Mr. President, I just want to thank the people who are serving on this authority. It's really something that flies under the radar for most people. And I know that you guys already are handling being on the General Assembly and their jobs. And it's really just thankless work. And I appreciate your efforts to try to fix the problems because many
I
of
can
us.
honestly say we had absolutely no idea what we were getting into. And we're all very happy now that we are. into it.
But you could easily step down and you haven't. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Seventy. Okay, so our next item, we're going to move on to new business number 6. It's request approval to use the ARPA funds not to exceed $20,000 for the school department to make repairs to the water main pipe at Hathaway Elementary School.
I would move to approve.
Second.
Is this the pot of money from the school receives or just the
This
town's
is-
technical money?
This is related to the item that you moved forward
Okay,
from DPW. So you see that there's a significant savings on that water project. The money that we'll save on that project is more than enough to cover this project. So what we're proposing is that we do this. There's no increase, actually, we'll be saving ARPA money. But we would like to get this project done.
I'll say so moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
You gotta X out.
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye, motion passes 7-0. Okay, next item. Number 7.
Fire district item.
Yes, request approval to use ARPA funds not to exceed $383,812 to help Portsmouth Water and Fire Department rehabilitate existing emergency interconnection with Stonebridge Water and in Tiverton, Secana River Pipeline.
Mr. President, I'll be recusing myself from this one as well.
I understood. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. So who is going to be, is Ms. Lynch's?
I'll tee it up. We have Jessica Lynch here from the Portsmouth Water and Fire District. I don't want to give a history lesson, but when the ARPA funds were announced over a year ago, and the mechanisms were being developed on how they would distribute these funds, it was always intended that we would focus on 3 things: water, sewer, broadband, and then that expanded over the last year. One of the things that Jessica will talk about tonight is that none of that money went to the water and fire districts. It went to the states, the schools, and the towns and municipalities. I got it echoed here. So when we developed our priority list and presented that to you last year, we did capture water infrastructure projects that were necessary in Prudence Island. However, we did not capture projects that would need to be done under Portsmouth Water and Fire District. Jessica and I talked a few weeks ago. She'll lay it out, but the bottom line is that there is an emergency interconnection between Stonebridge Water and Tiverton and Portsmouth that is no longer usable because of leaks in the system. They have tried to repair this a number of times. It now needs a liner. It's quite expensive. They can get 50% funding. So what we're proposing here is that we would cover through the ARPA funds up to half that cost. And then I put in my memo kind of a rework of the priorities and how we would be able to do that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jessica.
Good evening. I'm the general manager of Portsmouth Water. You know, you've been talking about resiliency and all that. So our goal is we have aging infrastructure. How can we start doing all the work we need to do on our system? A couple years ago, we replaced our pump station. Now we're looking at an emergency pipeline with Stonebridge Water. That was our original source of supply. Right now, it's an emergency supply for us. We, in the past, have repaired it. The line was working. Unfortunately, we inspected it and cleaned it in November, and it appears that there's some cracks and it's leaking. So the line is completely shut down right now, and it cannot be used unless we line it. We've been working with an engineering firm. We looked at different options as far as rehabilitation or replacement. We laid out our options. We decided we would clean and inspect the line and see how we could move forward. Our best way to move forward is to do a hose liner. Right now, we're at planning level costs. Our cost right now is about $767,000. I've been working with the Water Resources Board, and they have an emergency interconnection fund that's been around for quite some time, and they do have enough money left to cover 50% of the project. I have not presented to them yet, but basically they said, yep, this is exactly what it's used for. It's 2 ways, it's 50%. So we just really have to work with them, present, and get the approval. We feel that it's an important piece of infrastructure that we don't want to just get rid of. But you know, there's a lot of things we want to do. So unfortunately, the way that the ARPA funds came out, they came out to cities and towns, not districts such as ourselves. And you know, I'm the vice president of Rhode Island Waterworks. I'm the state director for New England Waterworks, and we're not seeing these type of water systems that are districts or separate from towns. They're not getting the money, unfortunately. So that's what I'm here to ask the town consider, you know, sharing some of the funds and partnering with us.
I'll pipe in if I may. I know I had a lot to say last time we discussed ARPA funds, and I think this is the perfect example of what ARPA funds should be used for. And I think it sticks with the theme of resilience that we just discussed extensively, and it's a really good use of that kind of emergency funding. So I would move that we approve the request.
Second, and just a quick question. Can you just explain exactly what you shifted around in so that everybody understands it's not just a piece of paper?
Which one was 3?
Page 2.
There's one with the
Page 2 of 2.
The financial.
Yeah, got it.
Going.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
Nope, right there.
It's the memo.
It's the mission.
It's
That
yeah.
one. There you go.
Right.
It's there.
Yeah.
Okay, this, you've seen this chart numerous times over the last year. The top part there, that's money that's already been out. Thank you. All right, money well spent. Okay. That top part there where it says respond to pandemic and necessary investments, that money has already been obligated. The bottom part were priorities that were approved late last year. Some of that money has already been obligated and then some of it has not. So the money that has not been obligated, we went ahead and either got more refined figures or just they were placeholders, and so we reduced them. So if you'll see the Island Park stormwater drain repair came down to 120,000. Portsmouth Park storm drain, we reduced that to 700,000. We still feel there's enough there. The resilience program, that's 100,000. Again, that's none of this is obligated money. We'll obviously be talking a lot more about this over the coming year. Tonight, you did approve the DPW water main extension, 118,000, but that was lowered. That's 50-some thousand, and then add in the 20 for the up to 20 for the school project. So there's savings there. I added in the project that we're talking about tonight, the Prudence Water and Fire District water infrastructure for an amount not to exceed $383,812. Then the next bunch of projects there, the street sweeper, trailer, clamshell bucket, radios, tasers, you've already approved those. There's a placeholder in there for IT servers, public safety. The IT folks have informed me that we need to replace those. And then we have, I'm working on an initiative. We lowered the amount that was, well, there was no money in there for broadband. There was just money left over. We put the $50,000 in there for broadband based on an initiative that I'm working on with Newport and Middletown. We're looking to hire consulting or an engineer that can produce a report that will tell us how we can get broadband onto Aquidneck Island. And then that would leave a little about $12,000 left over. So that's how we rejiggered this to accommodate Portsmouth Water's request.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. So Ms. Lynch, this will restore the backup?
Correct.
And so currently we just have whatever we're getting from Newport.
Newport, right.
And then if there's a shortfall, so so we can approve the 383.
Mhm.
You're going to seek the 50% from
Correct.
the other fund. What happens if there's a shortfall? Is that something that the water district's going to?
Yes, yep. We're
Okay.
also trying to work with Stonebridge Water to see if they have any funds available.
Okay.
So,
All right. No, I do agree with my colleagues. You know, from a resiliency standpoint, this is a fits the criteria for what the money was intended for. So I think, again, this will benefit all the citizens to have the backup water if necessary. So I know we've got a motion and a second. We do have some, I think we're going to get some comments. So we're just going to open it up to some comments. Mr. Fitzmaurice.
Thank you, Mr. President. Larry Fitzmaurice, 50 Kristen Court. First of all, I have a question. Is this pipeline an alternative source for drinking water distributed by the water department?
Yes.
Okay, I've advocated that they fix this thing for some time, but I wasn't sure it was the same one. There's another aspect of this, and that is if it has sufficient volume, when repaired, it helps us in bargaining, or it helps the water board in bargaining for water costs. Right now, we have one source, and we've been at the horns of this one for a while. But I don't know what you know about the water board's operations when they have to go up before the Utilities Commission and fight these increases in water costs. But this does give us apparently an option. And I think that that's a very important aspect of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzmaurice. Any other questions, comments? No?
If I may, I put my hand up, but I see it hasn't been recognized as Gary Crosby, town planner. This is a perfect example of what we will be seeing in the approval of the comprehensive plan. There's a whole coming up in March. I think that this is something that the town council will be addressing sort of globally when they approve the comprehensive plan. And so this is a perfect, to my mind, this is a perfect example of sort of overcoming by events, but at some point we will be making policy to do this sort of thing in the future as a town. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa? Aye. Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0, 6-0. One abstention. Recusal. Okay. All right. Moving on to new business number 8. It's town council review and approval of civic support requests. Mr. Rayner.
In accordance with the council's direction from a number of years ago, we solicit the civic support requests late in the calendar year. We put together the requests for your consideration. Those binders were distributed a couple weeks ago. If we can go to this backup, and really you just need to bring up the summary page. Well, they're bringing that up in the binder. For those that aren't familiar with what we put together, every organization that requests civic support from the town is required to submit a civic support request form, financial statements, and justification statements. So here we have the summary of the request for this year. Under the approved fiscal year 2022 column, you can see that total last year was $941,141. And the organizations that have numbers assigned to it were organizations that were awarded civic support. We have under the shaded column requested for FY 2023. That total is now $1,013,556. And you'll see the dollar amount change in the very last column. What we're looking for tonight is your guidance on how we should appropriate civic support so that we can build this into the budget. We're down to the last stages of the budget development, and then we'll have a discussion about CIP in the next meeting. But we need to nail down these two items before we go to press.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. I just want to, before we get going here, I just want to make a couple of comments. And again, the civic support requests, it's something we've been doing for a few years now. And I think they're all very worthy causes, and they provide the services that are, essentially for the citizens of the town. And it's hard for us to make these decisions because for every appropriation, it's hitting our taxes somehow, or we're cutting something if we're trying to balance our budget. So these are very tough decisions. I think in last year's process, we went through something very similar to what we're embarking on tonight. And then we got into the budget process 2 months later and we changed things anyway. So what I would like to maybe suggest from a council standpoint tonight is that we at least discuss our ability to, last year we approved $941,141. This year's request, as Mr. Rayner said, is just over $1 million. That is, not going to be sustainable year after year. What I would like us to consider is, we've given to groups in the past. I do not have a issue with, again, giving to the groups that we've already given to. There's some precedence there, and but I'd like us to set a cap tonight and not go over that cap. And we can all agree or spread the money around from that cap. But from Mr. Rayner's standpoint and from a budget standpoint, I would like us to just have a hard number that we do not go over after tonight. Just my suggestion, and I'll open that up for discussion.
Mr. President?
Yes.
So I hadn't done the math and come up with a cap. Many of the organizations proposed level funding for themselves.
Some did, yes.
I would propose that we level fund all organizations, with the exception of the library, which had asked for a $7,600 increase, and Newport Mental Health, which put in for a $1,660 increase. So with you add the 76 and the 16 to 941, there's your cap. But that would level fund everything but for those two organizations.
So you said the Portsmouth Public Library, which was the 76
The Portsmouth Free Public Library and Newport Mental Health.
for 1661. Along that line, I was just thinking in my own head of about a 1% increase, which is just over $9,000.
So coincidentally, there you go.
Well,
That's
but-
just a suggestion and for discussion.
Understood, and I appreciate Mr. Cashman's thoughts on this, but when I look at some of these, and we all are aware of the struggles and the pressures that have been put on mental health and of all of our citizens. But we're also asking all of our departments to stay within a 1 or 2% increase, and that's a 44% increase in funding. When I look at the number for the Prudence Island Volunteer Fire Department, that's a 12% interest, increase in funding. Library came in right at 1.4%. They, played by the rules, I guess. We also have a couple of new people or new organizations in there as well. The one that jumps out to me a little bit in what they have done this year, and 7,500 might be a little bit too much, but Darton, with the way inflation is running these days, food insecurity has become a big issue here in town, just like it is everywhere. And I think it'd be good for us to raise that up, and maybe not by 7,500, but maybe double it to 5,000. They do serve a lot of meals here, especially at the lower income housing facilities that we have in town, that we talked about having issues with money. So just earlier this meeting, I agree with raising Newport Mental Health. I don't know if we should essentially go up 45%, which is what they're asking for. I definitely don't see where Prudence Island needs a, what is that, 15 or 16% increase, somewhere in that neighborhood.
I was not suggesting
Yeah.
that.
No, I know you weren't. I'm just going right through the list in my own
Yeah.
head. I would love to support the Arts Guild. I would like to give, be great for Nate more money, but it's, at some point, we have to hold our civic support requests to the same guidelines that we're holding our entire budget to. And to have huge increases like this year after year, I mean, this is one of the things that we cut many years ago, unfortunately, to just support the general budget. So just my thoughts.
Mr. President, I'd like to add that I concur with Mr. Katzman's statements, as well as Mr. Hamilton's, but I would like to add that one of the new things I saw was the East Bay Community Action Program. And you would notice that they've pretty clearly laid out that they provide $600,000 worth of services to our community, including, I believe they provide the meals that are served at the senior center for $10,000. And the other two communities, Middletown and Newport, support this organization because of the enormous amount of things they do for the citizens. And so I would be in favor of giving them $5,000 just because we are very much lagging. $600,000, that's an incredible amount of services. And again, they provide the meals that are served at our senior center, period. So it's pretty, I think we should accept their very modest request.
I mean,
You
Mr.
may.
President,
Yeah.
I agree with a lot of what was said. Mr. Castman brought up the increase for the library. I think overall, the theme of these requests is for us to support organizations that provide services to our residents. So the library, their increase is pretty reasonable. I would support that. Question the volunteer fire department. I don't want to start a big discussion here, but we had a pretty lengthy presentation on resilience and stormwater management and planning. And that's the kind of thing that I would expect the Queen Island Planning Commission to be taking the lead on, and they're not. And I'm not sure they're providing $18,000 of value to our residents in terms of planning services for Queen Island. So personally, I think I would see a lot more value in giving $5,000 to East Bay Community Action Program than the $18,000 to AIPC. And even Martin Luther King Community Center with the meals that they provide for Portsmouth residents included probably is more valuable to our community than AIPC services over the last few years. So I would be in favor of reallocating those funds and supporting the organizations that have been more active in Portsmouth.
Okay. So I think, and again, I think we might all be at least on the same, almost saying the same thing. With respect to, I think we can agree to reallocations and things like that. I think, but really for tonight, what I'd like to make sure is we set a number, and then we can work on specifically maybe adjusting to numbers or whatnot.
We are asking our departments to hold to around 2%. So if we do a 2% increase, that sets the number at about 960, 350.
I would support that.
And then we as a
We can
council
backfill from there.
Yeah, we can make those decisions with how it actually gets divvied up.
Well,
Yeah, do we need to approve?
do you want
each
us to
of these
divvy it up tonight?
Rich?
Would it make your life easier?
Anybody wants to take work off my plate?
Yeah, I just want to, if we stick to the cap, that's the most important thing. If you want to do it tonight and we.
We know what the cap number is, we can make a recommended allocation.
Okay.
And then we can discuss that during the budget hearings, the budget meetings in April. But it won't, if you change it, it won't have a ripple effect for the rest of the budget. We're trying to fix it overnight.
Right.
Well, roughly a 2% increase is 960, 347. I rounded up to 350. But that at least also gives Mr. Rayner the ability to go back to the organizations and say, hey, I'm only getting a 2% increase. So your 13% at the Prudence Island Fire Department is not going to fly.
Right. Or if in some cases, we may make the decision to add,
correct,
add some funding. And if we do that, then
Yep,
somebody's
take it
not going to
someplace
get funded.
Right.
They'll be level funded or something along those lines. So I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. We want to be able to help where we can, but we have to do it responsibly, and at least holding the 2% increase, I think, is a good guide for us to go by. So I'm okay with that, and we can address it during the budget process with recommendations, and that's our opportunity to, adjust it. We did it last year. So
I'll make a motion to set the top line budget of the civic support.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think, and we will we will open it up for discussion, but I think we're not going to make any of those decisions tonight. Tonight, it's more about setting a 2% cap.
Make a motion to set the top line budget for the community support civic support at $960,350.
Second.
I didn't do the math, so that's more than 2%. Right?
It's 2%. It's $3 more than 2%.
Oh, you round, okay,
I rounded up from 347.
thank you.
He rounded up and then rounded down to have a nice round number. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Of people.
Yeah.
You should
Okay,
Hands
we'll,
up.
we'll,
Yeah,
we'll,
this is- yeah,
we'll, okay.
civic sword.
We will open it up for discussion, but it's all about consideration. So,
Thank you. Stephen Peterson, 88 Cove Street. I'm the executive director of Be Great for Nate. And I will point out, as Councilman Hamilton pointed out, we're a little bit above the 2% increase that you're having your departments go at. But we did stay level funded last year, even though we nearly tripled the services we were giving to youth in the town during COVID. So I came with a new proposal this year, and maybe it's something that refresh your palate a little bit more. But we just started our substance use prevention team. It's a group of high school kids that decided that if we really want to address mental health related issues and suicide related issues here in this town, which we have very bad issues with that. 3 out of 10 teenage boys in Rhode Island could be diagnosed with depression right now. We have the highest suicide attempt rate in the entire country of teenagers. Not enough is being done to do that. I know you guys have been very proactive in partnering with us on all these things, and Representative Court Friends here too, as she was our spearhead in passing the Nathan Bruno and Jason Flatt Act. But we started up something called Friday Night Lights to offer an alternative activity for youth to take part in this community, in a community where there isn't much for kids to do. I know Councilwoman Abbott agrees with that and all the work she's been doing since she joined the council to help improve that. But the kids said they wanted to do something more than pay for expensive speakers to come in to schools and say, don't do drugs, because all kids think about is, well, I'm not in math class right now, so this is pretty good. There's nobody on the island doing more for substance use prevention and suicide prevention than Be Great for Nate. And we've seen that year over year. So I won't do too much talking. I'll let the numbers do the talking. And then I have quotes from kids that have been through our Friday Night Lights, so you can kind of hear from them. And frequent flyer at our events will speak as well after me. But we average 61 kids per event that comes to our Friday Night Lights, and that's just Portsmouth High School kids. With this funding, we would expand down to do middle school events and elementary school events that were run by high school kids, teaching these kids that you can have fun without the pressures of substance. You can have fun just being yourself. I would be remiss if I didn't point out the amazing contributions by Gary Rahilly, the owner of West Main Pizza, and allowing us to host it there, and all that he's been doing for the community since forever when it comes to substance use prevention. So far we've had 11 events, which means 667 kids have come through the door in these events. We take a little pause when the CDC changed some of their guidelines in terms of indoor crowds, but we just did another one without advertising it and got 47 kids there. So they're looking for opportunities to get out there. They're looking for a reason to make smart decisions. We, as citizens of this town and as a town council, need to do everything we can to provide them with those opportunities. 94% of youth that have attended our events say that, yes, this is the best deterrent around towards youth using substances in this town. So now some of the quotes. It's been a fun way to hang out with all my friends and a really good stress reliever at the end of a week. I enjoy hanging out with my friends and getting free food. That's always a big one. Being able to go into Friday Night Lights allows me to have fun without the use of substances. One of my favorite parts of Friday Night Lights is the karaoke machine, which I know Councilman Hamilton would do a very good job on that karaoke machine. Some of the best nights of my fall. The karaoke, the food, and the company made every night after a football game memorable. The Friday Night Lights at West Main Pizza truly brought people together. And then the last one, and this is from one of our longest tenured members of the substance use prevention team. He said, Friday Night Lights has been very fun and eventful. It brings people closer together and keeps people safe. People are at West Main having pizza and having fun for just $10. It keeps them safe and away from substance use and not drunk driving, because that's one of the biggest issues he sees at the Portsmouth High School is the amount of kids that are drinking and driving on the weekend. So I just hope that maybe you don't increase this by the 300 and something %, but you do see the value and kind of the services that we're offering, and you are willing to make the investment for your, not only your high school youth, but within the coming months, your middle school and elementary school kids, because this isn't just going to be at West Main. We're going to be renting out movie theaters and Sky Zone and ice skating rinks to just do anything we can to give these kids something to do on a weekend, because no one else is.
Hi, Andrew Perry, 124 Taylor Road, and I'm the Vice President of ESI, and it's part of Be Great for Nate, and the Friday Night Lights. Being an athlete, playing multiple varsity sports, it's fun to see the community come together in a positive, safe setting every weekend, and without any pressure of substance use or making the right decision, and just seeing people come together and have true connection with one another rather than making bad decisions and everything that goes with that. So I just want to give my support to Stephen and Be Great for Nate.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got, I can't read. We've got a. Okay.
Okay. Good evening, counselors. Can everyone hear me or see me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate your continued contributions to the AIPC. They are certainly dollars well spent. There was a question earlier about the return on investment, in particular to resiliency projects for the Quinnipiac Island Planning Commission. To answer Councilor Abbott's question, I would point out that the Island Waters projects alone have netted over $1.8 million to the island communities, specifically nearly $900,000 to the town of Portsmouth. Over the last 5 years, $18,000 per year is about $90K investment. For every dime you've spent, we've given you back $1 in resiliency projects. If anyone would like a personal tour of any of the resiliency projects that we are doing island-wide, I'll be more than happy to facilitate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Who is it? Okay, just let them know.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
We got you.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the council and town administrator, Dennis Roy, the CEO of East Bay Community Action Program. Thank you for the opportunity to present before you this evening. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. Number one, we did receive funding from the town for many, many years. I don't exactly remember when it ceased to exist, but we did receive money from Portsmouth municipal support for many, many years. We service 10 communities, Newport County, Bristol County, and the City of East Providence. 9 of the 10 communities provide support for many, many years and through their municipal budgets for our agency. I realize fully that you have difficult decisions to make and try to look at, with limited funding, look at all the great work that all these various organizations have done. But I wanted to point out that the services that we provide, by and large, are to the most vulnerable Portsmouth residents. As example, we run a heating assistance program. Over 172 Portsmouth households have taken advantage of that program in calendar year 21. For almost $150,000 in income redistribution that's either going directly toward their heating bill or towards the vendor who provides their services for them, the oil company, the gas company. As was mentioned, we have the contract to provide the meals for this for the senior center, and we paid for almost 2,300 meals in the calendar year 2021. We do weatherization, appliance management program, which is we look to replace refrigerators, that are wasteful, et cetera, et cetera. We operate the Women's, Infants, and Children's Program, the WIC program, which provides nutrition vouchers for town residents. Over 108 moms and kids participated in that program. We have a community health center in Newport and a Head Start program in Newport. We have 263 health center patients who have Portsmouth as their residents. We serve over 100 adults and children in our dental program. We have 7 participants in the Head Start program. We also run a program called Healthy Families America, which works closely with pregnant moms and moms that recently brought their baby home. It was mentioned, we provide almost $600,000 in services, roughly 3,000. This is not a duplicated number, but it's roughly 3,000 different encounters. We haven't been before you in a few years, so I would encourage you to go to our website. We employ in 2021, just as we've employed 25 Portsmouth residents. I encourage you to go to our website. And once again, we serve the most vulnerable populations in the town. And we've been around for over 50 years. Please do check us out. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. I can't read it. even with glasses, I can't read it. Okay.
That's fine.
That's fine. Give them the upgrade.
Hello, council members. Edward McPherson here, 127 Johnny K. Kill in Middletown with Newport Mental Health. Appreciate your time this evening. We are deeply appreciative of the many years of support. As you know, we're in the midst of a mental health crisis, both on the youth front, but also, frankly, just adults and older adults. And we've been fortunate over the last handful of years.
Uh-oh. Even with the upgrade.
He'll be back. We need that broadband.
What's his name?
If you value the services, you take a moment to provide some municipal support so that we can show the communities we serve value the services we're providing. We are in a mental health crisis, and when folks need help, they turn to us. We have reopened our walk-in and are proud of the Portsmouth residents we serve through recovery and appreciate your consideration. Happy to answer any questions you may have, either here or offline.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any
Yeah, that's
further?
it.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. So again, this will be continued obviously during the budget process, but I think for tonight, we've got a good start with locking in at the 2% rounded up. And Mr. Rayner, you'll come back with some recommendations that we can then address during the budget process to fine tune it. But obviously, I think I can't speak for all of us, but I think we would all like to give more to these organizations. They do, they do provide an enormous amount of support to the town. Unfortunately, we do have our constraints that we have to deal with, even as Mr. Hamilton said, our departments are under the same scrutiny of trying to stay within the budget. So we'll do our best to try to help where we can. And I appreciate some of the groups that have requesting level funding, because that will allow us to maybe try to help some of these other folks as best we can. So thank you all. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Okay. Our next item Got to shoot down here.
Wrong.
It's a resolution authorizing the town of Portsmouth to issue not to exceed $21,439,299 general obligation bonds, notes, and other evidences of indebtedness to finance the construction, additions, renovations, improvement, alteration, repair, furnishing, and equipping of schools and school facilities throughout the town. How'd I do? Good.
Excellent. Flawless.
Do we have any questions?
This is just the formality of the bond that was approved by the voters, so I move that we approve.
And I second.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa? Aye. Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly? Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have correspondence.
Move to receive and place on file.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Ms. Jukusa? Aye. Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton? Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have future meetings. Next meeting is February 28th. And then we kick off on March 7th with our public hearing for the comprehensive community plan, followed by our regularly scheduled meeting of March 14th. So we'll just wait for those for now. That's it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Ms. Jukusa? Aye. Ms. Abbott? Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly? Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Good night, all. That is mine. That's
Stand
what's my
adjourned.
wife's. I'm